A Massachusetts prison guard was reportedly stabbed 12 times in a vicious attack, or in other words, an attempted murder. Now, this was a situation that occurred a few weeks ago at a correctional facility in Massachusetts, where, as you can see in this video, one of the officers was clearly targeted by the prisoners. He did survive the situation and the encounter. However, he did not walk away unscathed. He suffered multiple stab wounds, as I said. He suffered a punctured lung and other non-life-threatening injuries, and obviously was being treated at the hospital. 4 of the other officers were also injured during this encounter, suffering a variety of injuries with cuts and stab wounds to the face, the head, the back, the stomach. So all of the officers survived. However, they all got injured in the process. Now, we could sit here and focus this video on kind of just being nitpicky. We can break down what they did wrong. We can talk about what they did right. We can discuss things that they should have done better, what they could have done differently to, better position themselves, or whatever the case is. I'll be honest with you, I think they handled the situation extremely well. I don't want to Monday night quarterback these guys and kind of just be like on the sidelines and like, well, in hindsight, you could have done this or this, because I wasn't there. And they handled the situation well. They all survived. And you have to understand that anytime you're dealing with unexpected violent attacks like this, especially ones that have weapons involved, you're going to get injured, you're going to get cut. But they were able to back each other up, and they were able to control the situation amongst this just chaotic thing of violence that just occurred at this prison. So instead, I want to focus this video on lessons that can be learned from the situation so that we can incorporate that into our training to better prepare ourselves for situations like this in the future, and hopefully make it so that if we do find ourselves in an encounter that is similar to this, that we will be able to handle it a little bit better, or that we will be able to reduce the amount of damage that we or anyone that's with us takes. So the first thing I want to touch upon is just how quickly violent attacks happen. And not only that, but how quickly they escalate. Now, this officer looks away for a split second. I mean a second. And he takes a mean strike to the face. And it's not just a sucker punch. This prisoner had some form of sharp object and immediately just starts stabbing this officer in the face and the head. Officer didn't see it coming. He had no time to prepare for it, no time to react. And next thing you know, you're just being stabbed. So it's a very just brutal reality check of just, this is what a violent attack looks like. It's unexpected, it happens quickly, and you just have to deal with it from there. The other thing, building off of that, violent attacks escalate very quickly. And as we see in this video, it starts with a 1v1. It goes, by the end of it, it's a 3v3, right? Prisoner after prisoner just keeps running in, all focused on trying to take out the same correctional officer. Fortunately for him, he had other officers that were involved. But even still, it's a chaotic situation. And what that points out is that if you do find yourself in a fight, you can never fully just count out the fact that there could be other variables that come into play. There could be a weapon that comes into play. There could be other attackers that come into play. So you always have to be prepared for that, which means you need to not only be able to position yourself properly when you are in a fight, meaning that I don't want to put myself on the back. I don't want to put myself in a position that's going to leave me exposed. Ideally, if I can get on top and put myself in a way that will allow me to pop back up to my feet quickly so that I can engage with a second or third attacker if they come in, that's ideal. The other thing I have to be able to do is apply proper amounts of damage very quickly. I need to be able to knock out my attacker or break something just like that if the situation calls for it, so that again, I can deal with a weapon or I can deal with other attackers or whatever other variables that come into play. So you have to have those skills to not only control somebody, but also to apply damage very quickly. Now, we talk all the time about how critical it is to be situational aware. Now, obviously, we're not all going to be in the prison system like this, but even when you're out in public, get off your phone. If you're walking around, if you're walking to and from stores or in the parking lots, whatever, get off your phone, pay attention to what's going on around you, have your ears open so that you can hear what's going on around you, and just be observant. Just pay attention to who and what's going on. If someone feels suspicious or something feels off, distance yourself from it, so that way if something does happen, you've bought yourself some time to either make even more distance and get out of there, or at least prepare yourself for a physical engagement of some sort. But we want to try to prevent it from it. We want to try and prevent ourselves from being caught off guard as much as possible. So being situationally aware, if you want to call it that, is probably one of the best things that we can do when we're out in public. The second thing I want to talk about, this officer does a nice job when he's caught off guard. We call this being aggressively defensive, meaning that the moment this prisoner starts attacking him, he doesn't have any time to collect his thoughts. He doesn't have any time to really process what's going on, other than the fact that I've just been attacked. It sucks. It hurts really bad. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I got to flip the tables right away. And he just immediately gets on this prisoner, rips him down to the ground, starts hitting him. A second prisoner comes in. He immediately changes his attention to that prisoner, starts attacking him as well. So it's one of those that when you do find yourself in a fight, you have to be willing to be more violent than your attackers. You have to be willing to apply more damage if need be, right? You can't just kind of wait for them to do something and then you just react off of it. You have to try and turn the tables on them. And essentially you want to be the attacker. I know that doesn't sound great, but rather than me like defending myself and just constantly reacting to everything, I want to be the aggressor. I want to be the one that has my foot down on the gas pedal, and I just want to be, bam, 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 strike after strike, take you down, do some damage, get on top, draw my firearm or whatever I need to do. But I have to be the one that's initiating everything at that point and just catch these guys off guard. And it works very well. And honestly, I think that mentality saved his life, because I think if he had just kind of succumbed to that attack and just crouched and went into like a fetal position, he probably would have died that day. But because he flipped the script and immediately got aggressive, I honestly think that saved his life. So it's a good training habit and just understanding of what to do in those situations of like, yeah, we could talk about fight or flight. You have to fight, but you have to be, again, willing to be more violent than your attackers. This is just kind of like something to pay attention to, but again, we have to remind ourselves that we can't always run away or create space, which means that we have to know how to fight. We have to know how to engage with somebody that has a weapon. We have to know how to engage with multiple attackers, and we just essentially have to be comfortable engaging, right? That's why we train. That's why we learn how to strike. That's why we learn how to grapple, so that if we find ourselves in those situations and we can't run away, then we're comfortable enough in our physical skills of protecting ourselves that we are going to be able to kick in that fight response. Again, we're going to be able to be more aggressive, and we're going to be able to handle the business that needs to be handled. Obviously, in this situation, they're in a prison, so all the doors are locked, all the exit routes are locked, so the officers had nowhere to run. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't practice running away. If we want to be able to run away safely, we also have to make sure that our attackers aren't going to follow after us. So you, again, have to make sure that you've done enough damage to where they physically can't come back after you, or you've at least created enough space so that when you do decide to take off and run, that there's enough space and time in between you that there's just an unlikely chance that they're going to catch up. This was a big one that I wanted to point out, but this video shows how important grappling skills are. I don't disagree that you should train striking and grappling. However, of the two, I think grappling is a more critical skill to have, because at some point you're going to get hands-on. Even if you throw some good punches, not everyone's going to get knocked out on a one punch. It's not common, or at least not as common as what people think it is. But two, a lot of times when people are uncomfortable with striking on both sides, or if you land a good strike and the person's like, hey, I don't like getting punched in the face, I'm just going to grab you. But having a good grappling background, even if the person is bigger and stronger than you, you're going to be able to handle yourself just fine. Because again, if you're training how to grapple, if you're training jiu-jitsu and stuff, you're most likely dealing with bigger guys to begin with. So you should at least have a good understanding of how to manipulate a stronger, bigger person while keeping yourself safe. But nonetheless, in this video, we see multiple jiu-jitsu positions. We see top mount, we see half guard, we see full guard, we see back mount, we see front headlock. We see all sorts of different grappling positions, which just shows that in 1 minute of fighting, we pretty much just went through every basic jiu-jitsu position. So the more experience that you have with grappling, I don't know what experience these officers had, but again, they handled it pretty well. But the more experience that you do have in grappling, this situation could have been completely different. Now, if we go all the way back to my first point of how you need to position yourself so that you could deal with the unknown variables, if these guys have good grappling experience, even if they end up on their backs or end up on the ground, they will be able to work themselves back on top. They will still be able to control the attacker, or in this case, the prisoners. But more importantly, they will be able to position themselves so that they could pop back up to their feet if they need to, but they're also able to fully control the person on the bottom without any risk of getting cut, stabbed, struck, anything. Because again, if you know how to grapple, you know how to control another human being. Another point I want to touch upon is utilizing clothing, right? Hoodies, shirts, t-shirts, jackets, whatever. Obviously in this situation, both the prisoners and the officers have material on them, but I think it's an important skill to have both offensively and defensively of how to deal with clothing. And it is definitely something that you need to incorporate into your training if you are training for self-defense. Now, let's just say it was a 1v1 between an officer and a prisoner. None of the other prisoners or officers were involved in this case, just a simple 1v1. If you're dealing with a bigger person, it's very difficult to hold on to a big person's arm or limb and control it. I'm going to be able to just push you off or pull you away. However, even on a bigger person, if I'm able to grab their clothing and utilize their clothing to lock out their arms or position themselves differently, even if they are bigger than you, it's very difficult for that person to get control of that limb back if you are using the clothing properly. That's why a lot of times when you see like knife attacks, not only will they sometimes post off of you as they're stabbing, but they'll like grab your collar and like shove your material or shirt back into your face. And now I'm blinding you while also driving you away and then continuously stabbing and attacking you. And the only way that I can deal with the attacking arm is I have to deal with those grips. I have to know how to break those grips or isolate those grips, make those grips useless, whatever. But I have to know how to deal with collar grabs and shirt grabs of some sort. So in situations where it is a 1v1, or maybe you're outsized, or the guy's is bigger and stronger than you, I need to be able to learn how to utilize clothing to better position myself, but also to get better control situations. That's why like gi jiu-jitsu, I think, is a very critical skill to have for training in self-defense. People want to argue, oh, no gi or gi. They both have their place. No gi allows you obviously to learn how to control actual limbs. Gi lets you learn how to actually utilize material. They both have a great place when it comes to self-defense, and you need to train both if you're asking me. But that being said, though, I've seen countless knife attack videos or just weapon videos in general where the defender is struggling to defend themselves because they don't know how to manage and deal with material grips to begin with, or they're struggling to control the person and get control of the weapon because the person's bigger than them and they're having a hard time controlling limbs. So again, utilizing shirts and stuff, especially in this situation, if it was simply just a 1v1, because it does look like the prisoner was bigger than the officer. If he had a good understanding of how to utilize clothing, he might have been able to kind of stiff arm or at least control the blade and the attacking arm a little bit better than just trying to isolate the body as a whole. Last but not least, and I think this is just a good lesson for everyone when it comes to self-defense, you are your first responder. You cannot count on anyone else to protect you or come and save you. Backup, police, whatever, they're never going to be there like that. Even in this situation, it took a full minute for the full force of officers to come in and break up the fight. Yes, there were officers running in throughout, but then there were also prisoners running throughout. So like none of the officers were able to outnumber the prisoners by any means. It was this constant one officer, one prisoner. Two prisoners, two officers. Three prisoners, three officers. So it was always evenly matched, which means everyone was fighting a 1v1 fight the entire time. So you have to count on your own physical skills to protect yourself. You can't count on anyone else. You can't depend on the fact that, oh, I'll just call 911 and wait for the police, because guess what? They're not going to be there in a split second. And I tell this to people all the time. If you really want to know how to protect yourself, you need to learn how to fight. You need to at least be able to protect yourself long enough for the proper authorities to come and actually step in, or see if there's bystanders that are going to jump in. But again, I can't also depend on bystanders either. I can really only depend on myself. So I highly encourage that you learn how to strike. I highly encourage that you learn how to grapple. And more importantly, you need to be situationally aware at all times. At the end of the day, these officers handled the situation very well. As I mentioned, I'm not going to sit here and criticize what they did right or wrong. They survived the situation, but hopefully by showing you this video and touching upon a few of these learning points, we can incorporate that into our training and better prepare ourselves for any sort of future event that's anywhere similar to this. So as always, stay safe.